Loop 8 Summer of Gods has the trappings of everything I love in games: an idyllic seaside setting, fun dating sim mechanics, and an interesting cast of characters. It should have been a game that I loved. However, its obtuse mechanics and frustrating looping mechanic ruin any potential this game ever had.
This is Ashihara Nakatsu, a nice little town.
Going into Loop 8, I think it's important to have the proper expectations so you know what it is versus what it isn't. Loop 8 is a visual novel dating sim roguelike. Yes, you heard that right, a dating sim roguelike. I don't think I've ever heard of a game like that, and after playing through Loop 8, I can absolutely understand why. Now, what does that even mean? Throughout the game, you'll increase your bonds with characters living in your small town. Your bond levels with these characters dictate your stats in combat like HP and stamina. You'll also unlock new story events with each character depending on your bond levels with them. However, if you reset the loop, this basically resets all your bond levels you've been building, and you'll need to click through the same dialogue over and over and over again. Some ideas sound good on paper, but maybe when it comes to the execution, it just doesn't work out. However, this idea doesn't even sound good on paper. Why would you make a roguelike out of a dating sim whose main gameplay is clicking through dialogue? In other games like Rogue Legacy, for example, at least replaying is tolerable because the gameplay is fun and you're slowly improving. In Loop 8, after you reset the loop at least once, the gameplay is just clicking through dialogue as fast as you can to get back to where you were before. It's incredibly unfun. Now, what this game isn't is a Persona-like. Don't be fooled by the high school setting, turn-based combat, and cute waifus. There's shockingly little combat. You don't really spend a lot of time at the high school if you don't want to, and well, the waifus here are actually pretty good. But what's the story in Loop 8? Why are you in this town? Why does this game loop? And why is there a cute fox girl? Well, I don't have an answer for that last one, but I can explain the rest. In Loop 8, you play as Nini, the lone survivor of a space station attack after a god, referred to as Kagai here, destroyed it. He then transfers to a small town in Japan to live with a distant relative named Konoha who is the same age as him. From here, you try to live a quiet life in this idyllic seaside town. Unfortunately, the Kagai have other plans. Early on, Kagai start invading your town and possessing people, and here's where Loop 8's true frustration begins. Once the Kagai start invading, short POV scenes will play of them wandering around town. The very first loop of the game clearly shows what happens when a character gets possessed, but it doesn't explain it at all. Essentially, they'll show a character getting upset, and then a portal will appear at the town shrine. Once it appears, you'll enter an alternate reality version of the town Ashihara, and you'll need to break down a barrier to rescue the possessed character. That said, in each subsequent possession, you'll only be given very vague clues. Maybe it'll show a Kagai wandering around a specific part of town, or mention something vague that could be about a certain character. Oftentimes, I'd explore that area multiple times and nothing would happen, and then other times it would show a cutscene of the character being possessed. Something about your social bonds with characters dictates when and where they'll show up, but it's never explained at all. More often than not, I'd run across characters by accident. Oh, and by the way, once a Kagai first shows up, you only have 5 days to find them, or the game resets the loop and you have to start all over. And I cannot tell you how many times the loop reset when I talked to everyone and went everywhere trying to activate that portal, and it just would not show up. There was once a string where the game looped 4 times in a row without me finding a single person in any of those loops. I cannot properly express how frustrating it is to click through the same dialogue over and over and over again, just praying that this is the loop where I'll find someone. It completely sucks all the fun and joy out of the game. If I weren't playing this for a review, I probably would have shut the game off after the second failed loop and never played it again. And just so you know how confusing and obtuse this game is, I had to email XSEED for help, and even they didn't really know how the game worked. I also talked with Alex from Backlog Battle and David Vink quite a bit during the review period, and none of us could truly understand how this game's systems worked. Now, when you do find the possessed victim, this is where Loop 8's scant bit of combat comes into play. You and a party of 2 other characters will fight a monster possessing the character, but once again, it's pretty vague. For starters, you can only control your one character. You can't control your other party members. They'll just do whatever they want. And your attacks are either friendly, affection, or hate. What's the difference? I don't know. The only thing I ever noticed was that affection reduces the enemy's strength, so I ended up just doing that each time. I think it's supposed to be a dialogue-based battle system, but it never seemed to matter. Now, once I got the HP down to 0, I could either save or kill the characters being possessed. I ended up just saving them every time, and I don't really know what happens because I never ended up killing any of these characters. Now, after you save a character, the next Kagai will invade the town, and you'll just repeat these same steps over and over until the game's conclusion.
And so day 2 came to an end. I need to get used to living here.
It's a real shame that the game is so unfun to play because the world and characters the team at Marvelous have created are so interesting. Most of the minute-to-minute gameplay will be running around town talking to characters. They all have shockingly good backstories, and some of the revelations you'll learn about each one might surprise you. When you talk with characters, you'll be given choices on how to interact with them, like learn more, compliment them, or just tell them like it is. As you interact with characters, your bonds with them will increase, and new dialogue options will open up where you can have special story events like study together, go somewhere fun, or even go on dates. These character moments were a huge bright spot in an otherwise miserable game. It was these moments that kept me wanting to play more to see where these relationships with these characters would go. It reminded me of some of the best social links the Persona series has to offer. However, there comes a breaking point after so many loops of reading the same dialogue over and over that whatever cool story revelations may have been waiting, it's simply not worth it anymore. Once again, it's a shame because the game is downright gorgeous. The game has an incredible art style for its characters that are all highly expressive, something super important where most of the game is spent reading dialogue and looking at characters animate. The small town is also incredibly charming, from its tiny little downtown area to its serene and cozy beach. I loved exploring every inch of Ashihara. It's just a shame that it's so small. There's only about 7 different environments in the entire game, and it gets a little stale going to the same ones over and over. I also want to give a positive nod to the voice acting and the music. All the performances are incredibly well done, and there's a lot of voice dialogue. In a game where you mostly just interact with characters, that might not be the most surprising thing, but it was certainly welcomed. The music also fits the vibe of the town incredibly well. Considering the dire nature of the story, the soundtrack, for the most part, is really upbeat and light. If you're looking for those easy listening, cozy vibes, then Loop8 has those in spades. Now, I don't enjoy writing negative reviews, especially for games I was really looking forward to like Loop8, but I also want to be honest with you so you can spend your money wisely. Unfortunately, Loop8 Summer of Gods is a game that I cannot in good conscience recommend. Despite its beautiful visuals and compelling characters, its obtuse mechanics and repetitive looping mechanic make for a very frustrating experience. It's hard to even say how much dollar-to-hour value you'll get out of this game if you do decide to play it, because Loop8's in-game clock is incredibly broken. It's constantly counting time even if you're not even playing the game, even if the app is closed and the PlayStation is off. For me, it probably says something like 200 plus hours, but in reality, it was probably closer to 20 or so hours. Because of Loop8's roguelike nature, it's hard to even put a real hour counter on it. Now, while Loop8 is a massive disappointment, there are plenty of games out there that are amazing and would deserve a 10 out of 10. Now, if you want to see some JRPGs that I'd give a 10 out of 10 to, make sure you check out this video right here. And special thanks to Reset Switch, Tyler Kuzawa, and the Miyazaki Man for supporting me over on Patreon. To get exclusive videos and other cool perks, consider supporting me over on patreon.com/thegamingshelf. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.